The new JoJo chapter is here and it is absolutely incredible. How can it not be when it starts off with the GOAT, Acca Howler? Though he didn't appear in the last chapter, Araki knew that we were fiending for more Howler content, and so he delivered with something really important. Howler's backstory, and not just Acca Howler's backstory, but the entire history of the Howler bloodline, dating back to the 1840s, which was even before Steel Ball Run took place. Just a quick rundown for anyone who didn't understand too well. The original Howler, who was called Latrato at the time, showed up in Hawaii due to a shipwreck and then started living there. He was able to be successful because he was able to find water in Hawaii. So because of all the volcanoes and stuff in Hawaii, it's really hard for the land to form rivers. So Latrato dug horizontal tunnels and was eventually able to find water sources that alleviate these problems. And because he was able to do this, it stretched out to a bunch of businesses, and the Latrato family was able to grow into a giant mega corporation that owns all this land and stuff. Latrato changed to Howler once Hawaii joined the US, and so Latrato's English translation was pretty much Howl, aka Howler. Obviously not the best summary of it, but it's just to understand the essentials of the situation. Also, a bit of a side note, it's revealed in this chapter that Acca Howler is 42 years old. It's honestly a bit surprising to me. I felt like he was in his mid-20s to early 30s or something. He kind of had that vibe going on, like especially when his first appearance was getting royally duped, and it really seemed like the bank workers were looking down at him. I felt like the sense of Howler being a fairly new guy on the street who's still learning about life was pretty present, but I guess not. 42 for an age is pretty interesting. It shows that Howler has a lot of life experience and that he won't be taking things lightly. And honestly, 42 is the perfect age for a JoJo main villain, but I'll get to that in a bit. First things first, in my opinion, this backstory does remove the idea that Acca Howler is a descendant of the Zeppelis. In my opinion, it could still be possible that the Latratos and the Zeppelis could be related in some form, but the theory that Howler was a Zeppeli before changing his name and moving to Hawaii or something like that has definitely been deconfirmed. And honestly, yeah, it's good to leave that as deconfirmed early on, since it's not really something that Araki would necessarily do, but connecting these two different characters together, if it just didn't serve a purpose, this is just, yeah, it's just pretty unnecessary. But yeah, for Copium fans out there, you could have a strong case for this one. But yeah, the backstory pretty much removes my own personal opinion of Howler being related to the Zeppelis. Just because it's Italian doesn't mean it's connected to Gyro. I mean, Araki loves Italy. This is just another occurrence of Italy being in JoJo. But what's pretty interesting about this backstory is that this isn't necessarily Howler's backstory, but the backstory of his family. This means that we still don't have the actual character background of Acca Howler himself, just of his family name. We did get glimpses of it 2 chapters ago, but there's still so much to know about this guy. But this history lesson really does come out of nowhere. I know I was joking about us missing Howler last chapter and Araki giving us some content, but seriously, the inclusion of this backstory is really strange, especially because Howler doesn't appear anywhere else in this chapter. In no other panels do we see Acca Howler or his whereabouts, but for seemingly no reason we get this background on the character for this chapter, and then we go back to our regularly scheduled stand battle. So now the real question that comes down from this information regarding Howler, like, does it disprove him being the main villain? Well, it is hard to say right now, but I will say the fact that Araki didn't tell us the history of Acca Howler specifically is certainly a plus for him. We got information on his family, and to me, this is Araki trying to hype up Acca Howler without giving everything away. If Araki gave away his entire story in a singular chapter he wasn't even a part of, yeah, I'd start to think he wasn't the main villain and was just going to be an overarching villain for the next couple of chapters. But this does change a lot. We can potentially see his own history of when he was a child in a future chapter, when the stakes are are much higher and we see Acca Howler's perspective in life. But yeah, because of the information we did get, I'm more inclined to think that Acca Howler is going to be the main villain, or at the very least like a top 3 villain in terms of importance for Jojolands. So besides this background, what happened in the park? Well, it was full of action. There wasn't many words spoken, but it was just purely Jodio versus Jean and Lulu for the most part, and it was pretty fun to see. We haven't really had chapters that displayed pure fighting like this often in Jojolands. The most I can think of is chapters 10 and 11, where they fought Charming Man before shortly recruiting him to the group. But yeah, this was pretty fun to see, especially because of how tense and unique everything was made for this fight. So Paco, I mean, he barely had an appearance this chapter. He had a couple of panels desperately trying to tell Jodio of Jean and Lulu, but to no avail. Honestly, I feel like Araki only included these panels because of the way chapter 18 was ending, and it would have been weird to not see what happened to Paco after making such a goated move of taking the steel elevator wall as a shield. Like, there really wasn't much going on, but just the slight appearance of Paco is really funny. While Jodio is out here fighting for his life, Paco is just curled up in a ball. It's pretty funny, all things considered. But you know what's not funny? A bunch of things, actually. We're going to be getting into some pretty heavy stuff this chapter. But I need to talk about a certain seed that Araki planted that just went nowhere. Last chapter, I had a whole section of the video talking about this woman right here, and how the background characters that Araki added in chapter 18 were looking really suspicious. Araki was putting more of an emphasis on these background characters than usual. They kept appearing over and over again, even in just panels by themselves. So I was really wondering what Araki was trying to do. Turns out it was in fact all a red herring, because Jean just shoots them all. Like come on, man. Araki, he really pulled this. But to be honest, it was a bit expected. It would be strange for just some random character to show up in the middle of the fight and also try to defeat our gang. Seems like too much to write with, so this red herring angle was pretty cool, but it's like, dude, come on. Honestly, there is still a bit of hope that they could do something later on, but like, that's pretty nonsensical. Just like how only 7.5% of my audience is subscribed to my channel. Come on, guys, you gotta subscribe and hit the bell notification. But if there's something that we should especially be notified of, it's the status of Usagi, because that is the whole reason why we are in this hospital. Yo, Araki, I need you to help out Usagi. For the past like half year, he's just been going through turmoil and is nearly dead. I miss him. Please save him quickly, Araki. But Araki enlisted Dragona and Charming Man to do the job for him, and it seems to have worked a bit. They were able to target the Bag's Groove's stand bodies that were in Usagi's brain, but except there is an issue with this, being that the doll that Lulu had for a while got stuck to the MRI machine due to its magnetic properties, which means that the doll was made out of metal. It's a bit strange, but okay. And yeah, this doll has proven to be a load of trouble for most of our Jojolands gang, and you'll see its disastrous effects later on in this video, but right now its connection to the MRI caused multiple Bag's Grooves to show up in Usagi's brain, right as Dragona was going to get rid of one body that they saw originally. Not only this, but the doll was able to interact with Charming Man and Dragona physically, so now externally they also have to deal with these little Bag's Grooves as well. It's honestly really crazy. I need to know how they solve this issue. Let's go back to the fact that Jean shot everyone, because our villains of the chapter, Jean and Lulu, were pretty interesting this time around. The entire chapter they were being extremely secretive, targeting our Jojolands gang but not making it obvious who they were in order to just silently defeat them. And that idea bled into this chapter, and it led to a lot of amazing panels. It was them versus Jodio in this chapter, and it was quite the treat. I love how it started with Jean sitting down as Jodio walked past him. I really liked the panels that had Jean and Lulu in this mysterious state, where Jodio couldn't even tell they were bad guys. Jean looked extra cool in these panels where he was just on his phone and then secretly shot his bullets towards Jodio. It was just so secretive and cool. They were just trying to silently get the job done. But what confused me was that if they were really trying to be secretive, it really wasn't the best way to do it. I mean, shooting someone, even if it was silent, would certainly be noticeable visible to everyone else in the room. Like, think about it. If Bobby Jean was successful in shooting Jodio at this moment, what would they do when a crowd of people see Jodio on the floor, bleeding and clearly dying? Obviously, it would throw a bit of suspicion to Bobby Jean and Lulu, who were right in front of him when Jodio would get shot. It's for this reason that I really like the fact that they gave up trying to be secretive as soon as their cover was blown. It reminds me of how I stopped being secretive of the fact that I have a Discord server, like, everyone please join it. But yeah, Bobby Jean figured out that there was really no reason to hide it anymore. After his initial shots towards Jodio, and like, yeah, they certainly went off with a bang, but yeah, once they didn't work, like, there was no point in hiding. He was shooting up the entire room in order to get Jodio. But with Jodio narrowly escaping, it didn't seem to have worked. All of this trauma done to everyone in the room just to be like, yeah, we have to get rid of this footage. It's really feeling like an end-all be-all situation for Bobby Jean and Lulu here. But I think the biggest takeaway from this chapter is a slightly new ability that November Rain has displayed to us, and just wow, it is absolutely broken. During the fight, Bobby Jean, using his stand, shot a bunch of bullets at Jodio numerous times during the fight. Now, how is Jodio meant to protect himself? With November Rain, of course. Look at this. November Rain makes a shield out of rain just to deflect the bullets. It's a bit weird since Bobby Jean's bullets were said to be slow and spinning. You'd think that something like rainwater wouldn't be able to deflect it as if it were a wall, but I guess these raindrops are just so heavy and dense that they can deflect bullets now. I don't know. I don't know much about science, but this is absolutely insane. What's also pretty interesting is that the effect that is made by these raindrops and how it deflects the bullets reminds me a lot of Love Train. Like, it just looks really similar to me. It's essentially just a wall that makes it so that the user can't be harmed. So November Rain as a stand is crazy. Yeah, it is safe to say that we did not give this stand the credit it deserved when Jojolands first aired. This chapter in general showed that November Rain can tactically be used for fights, and that it isn't necessarily a hindrance, but is actually just super unique. So November Rain is broken, and here is the trend that Jodio hasn't broken, because that is one of the Joestar Birthmarks. That is right. In this chapter, we get a panel of Jodio having the Joestar Birthmark. From what I know, Jodio hasn't been shown with this birthmark at all, with this being the first occurrence of him having it. I honestly blame the clothing that Jodio has. I mean, he is wearing a sweater, so it's going to be hard to see his back at all, as shown here, where we really only get a glimpse of the birthmark rather than having it on full display. Honestly, Araki does this a lot. He rarely shows off the Joestar Birthmark unless it's for parts that have it baked into the plot, like Stardust Crusaders showing it everywhere, and Jojolion displaying it a lot as well. I find it quite strange, like, this emblem is the thing that's connecting all of your main characters together. I would try to have it shown a lot more often than what Araki does, or at least have it shown once in the first few chapters of a new part, just to remind the cast that these guys are full-bred Joestars, rather than showing off half of it in some random panel a couple arcs into the part. But Araki is a genius, so I won't doubt the GOAT on this one, because I can personally see why Araki does this the way he does. You know, Araki is an artist and he really loves to draw, and I think forcing himself to draw the birthmark might not really fit his style. Araki is all about these dynamic poses and stuff, so forcing himself to always display that one part of the shoulder and back just might not fit his style. He will show it off when he wants to, and when he thinks it would truly make sense. He wouldn't just make art for the excuse to show off the birthmark unless it is truly essential to the plot. And yeah, so far in Jojolands, the birthmark has not shown itself to be important at all, and nor do I really think it will be in the future, to be honest. So yeah, I think Jojolands is just going to be a part where we rarely see the birthmark every now and then it won't be essential or anything, it'll just be there for design. But honestly, you tell me if you agree with this answer of mine or not in the comments. But with all of these cool scenes, the best panel of today's chapter, in my opinion, definitely has to be this one. Honestly, this entire page is absolutely fire, but the way Jodio just sneaks up on Bobby Jean here is incredible. The context behind this is pretty cool as well. Bobby Jean was was hunting for where Jodio was and had to choose between two bathrooms on where Jodio went to. Bobby Jean was being extra cautious, looking at both options before checking the girl's bathroom. And it was then we find out that he made the incorrect option, as Jodio ended up right behind him, resulting in this insanely cool panel. It just sucks that this panel didn't really lead to much, since Bobby Jean was so secure in being cautious that he already shot the gun behind him while walking towards the bathroom. So Jodio could only protect himself at the moment, but man, just what an insanely cool panel we got from this interaction. Like, just look at this. But soon after this panel, we get some pretty shocking news. Jodio, trying to hide from Bobby Jean, soon found out that he was infected by Bag's Grooves, and the effect was already taking place. And yeah, the doll is a big issue, because Jodio also touched the doll earlier in the chapter, as he was giving it to Lulu when he thought that Lulu was just a normal bystander rather than the enemy. And so this situation is extremely scary. Dragona and Charming Man have to deal with a dozen more Bag's Grooves bodies. Paco is stuck in an elevator, and Jodio now has symptoms of Bag's Grooves while Bobby Jean is within the room trying to kill him. I feel like Jodio is going to be able to quickly deal with Bag's Grooves, in my opinion. I think it will reveal his location, like he might use November Rain to target Bag's Grooves inside his body, the same way he was able to help Dragona. Bobby Jean might see the November Rain and quickly try to attack him. I think with all of this, it might be up to Paco to return back to the floor and deal with these issues, but the next chapter is going to be absolutely insane. Wait a minute. Yeah, sadly, next month there is not going to be a Jojolands chapter, as Araki will be taking a break. That means we have to wait 2 months for the next chapter to see how our gang is doing and how they're going to fix these issues. It is pretty unfortunate because I really want to know how Jodio is going to deal with being infected by Bag's Grooves, but it seems we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to find that out. It's quite upsetting, but of course with Araki being 64 years old right now, breaks are to be expected, especially when he's been doing manga work for 40 years at this point. In fact, watch this video where I do go over Araki's first ever manga that he published. It's an old video, but I honestly think it's still pretty good.